when I am so privileged when someone shares with me their goal, because there's so many people you can't share your goals with for whatever reason, right? And so if you share that goal with me, I can paint a picture in my mind based on what you're telling me. So now I'm vested. I want to see you do the thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, I could not be more privileged, more honored, more happy, because this woman brings a smile as soon as she comes into our space. Not only does she bring in a smile, but she also brings a motivation, inspiration, and the ability to achieve goals and get this 90 days, not 120, not 365, 90 days. And her show is called 90 Day Wins. And she is the coach that is going to help us do just that. So Coach Sandy B, welcome to the Guiding Gigs Show. How are you, my friend?
I am well. Thank you so much for having me today, Alan.
It's absolutely a pleasure. We are already I will go ahead and give the backstory quickly, because when you are thrown into the Podfest fire, you have to, I guess fire, I just mixed metaphors, sink or swim. When you're thrown into the ocean, you have to sink or swim. So we were thrown into a networking ocean, and we immediately, two fish were like, okay, we got to swim. And we found each other in the same school. And so there were so many commonalities to our stories, to what we do. But what I really want people to learn is about what immediately attracted me to your story and to your message of 90 Day Wins, of achieving goals and actually seeing them come to pass versus just wishing and hoping and not actually applying those lessons. So, but people might be meeting you for the first time. You're a fellow podcaster, so you know this question is coming. So if somebody meets you for the first time, in that first minute or so, they may not get to hear anything else. They may not click any more links. They're silly if they don't, but they should. But if they don't click any more links, what are those few things you want them to know about you upon first meeting?
I would say that I would want them to know, I believe we can actually achieve goals every 90 days. They call me the 90 Day Wins lady. I know that if you take the time to think about what you desire and then put that effort and that belief behind it, you will achieve amazing things. I've seen it over and over again, whether in my personal life or in my professional life. I've seen myself as well as other people, family members, colleagues, coworkers achieve goals. So I am that encourager. I'm that person that if you do not want to achieve anything, do not tell me, because if you tell me you want to achieve whatever it is, I am actually going to believe you. And I am going to remind you and find a way to encourage you to actually do the thing.
All right, so I'm going to put this in. I believe that if I was in your family and I was we were going to Thanksgiving dinner, I'm the person, you're the person that's going to remind me of what I said last Thanksgiving and be annoying about it and say, have you done the thing? And then I'm going to move to the other side to get my cranberry sauce because I'm going to be like, don't remind me of what I didn't follow through with. You're that person. You're that family member.
I am, but I do it with love and care and empathy and truly belief. When I am so privileged when someone shares with me their goal, because there's so many people you can't share your goals with for whatever reason, right? And so if you share that goal with me, I can paint a picture in my mind based on what you're telling me. So now I'm vested. I want to see you do the thing. And it's amazing when you realize someone's in your corner and they actually believe what you said you can do. It's amazing to see how people can just flourish because that person that they talk to believes in them and is encouraging them and truly wants to see them win.
Now, I love this so much, but anytime I hear a fellow creative guest speaker share their passion for doing something, usually I say, okay, are they describing themselves? Are they describing how they were once wanting to believe in something, needed somebody to believe in them, and didn't? So I do know a little bit about my former stalking, about your background. Yes. What was that background in? And was there somebody at some point that had to be that person for you to help you see a dream or something that you said you were committed to and maybe hadn't followed through with?
Uh, I've had so many people that literally have been, I believe, placed in my journey to help me. I can think of, so I have a background in corporate accounting, over 25 years in corporate accounting. Really enjoyed a amazing career, got to travel all over the world. And it's funny when you say things to people and then they remind you, yeah, you said you were going to do that in undergrad. You said you were going to be a corporate accountant and you were going to travel the world. And it's like, I did say that. And thank you for reminding me. So I've always had people that have helped encourage me. But specifically, I would say when I started my podcast, I was in a MBA meeting here in Atlanta, and it was this big event, and the speakers were asking different questions. And so I raised my hand, I stood up, and I asked my question. To this day, I can't really remember. I have the gist of what the question was, but I got up and asked a question, and the facilitator stopped. And he's like, I could just listen to her talk all day. What about you guys? And I'm like, oh man, like he totally put me on the spot there. And then I get a text from one of my friends who just happens to be a corporate coach. She texts me and she said, I told you to use your voice. It wasn't like, girl, he just called you out. It literally was like, I told you to use your voice. And I'm like, what does that mean exactly? And so I was in a mastermind group. I love Think and Grow Rich. Anything Think and Grow Rich. If there's a book, I love it. I appreciate it. And so I was in this mastermind group and I was asked to speak about my 90-day wins framework that I had started. And so I spoke on that podcast. And then I was invited to be on another podcast and another podcast. I'm like, I think this is it. This is how I use my voice. And as soon as I decided that that's what I was going to do, it seemed like things were coming at me. God was just like, here you go. Here you go. This is what you do. You go to this event, you do this, you listen to podcasts, see what you like, see what you don't like. And then I was just blessed to be able to go to an event that it just so happened the hosts of this podcast that I absolutely love, two of the hosts, they were there as well as the producer. So one thing I'm really good at, especially in person, if there is something, there's a question I need to ask, I'm not afraid to ask it, obviously.
Yeah.
And so the one host was there. I talked to the other host. Next thing you know, they have other events I'm going to. I'm learning. I'm like, I'm in this community. I'm learning what I can. And then I asked one of the producers, would you help me? Would you show me this? Sure, whatever you need. And then he became one of my trusted advisors. To this day, he is one of my trusted advisors 4 years later. So long story short, yes. This has been my story where I just believed in myself and desired to do something, and lots of prayer, lots of learning, lots of growing, putting myself out there, making sure I'm getting in different communities like Podfest to meet the people that are doing the things. And I've just been so amazingly blessed to just have an opportunity to say, I want to try this, it's funny because I think sometimes we put ourselves in these boxes. I don't think anyone puts us in, we put ourselves, right? So it's like, well, I've only been this corporate accountant, right? Like that's what people know me as. But also people know me as someone that has encouraged them as we were coming out of that meeting for the audit that we were preparing for. And so once I realized that, one, I do have a voice and I can use it, and then I can create this podcast where it's my baby. I can take these different steps and learn these different things. It's like, no one's going to stop me. I'm, that song All the Way Up. Like,
yeah, there you go. Exactly. I was going to go, ain't no stopping us now. We can go all the way. We can go either way you want.
That one too.
Gosh, this is so amazing. I really want to make sure that people see the beauty and the simplicity of this though. And it's so hard for me not to go immediately nerdy straight to the marketing and all that kind of stuff and stay focused on the actual problem you want to solve.
Yes.
But there's both. I think right now our church is going through, we're talking about vision in our church. We're talking about 5-year visions. I mentioned this right before we got on hit record. And
Yes.
so literally our entire church, my pastor was asking, where could you be in 5 years? Vision, 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 Habakkuk 2 and 2 and 3, right? So we're talking about where we want to see ourselves. And the key thing I wanted to ask you is the first thing before I go ahead is the whole point of that is being making sure the vision is plain. Write the vision and make it plain and
Yes.
simple. And there's nothing more simple than 90-day wins. So I wanted to ask you, where did that framework come from? Why did you go for 90 days? What was the thing? Was it before the audit? Was it after that? Was it as you started your podcast? Was this something
Yeah.
way back when that you read? Like, when did it
Yeah.
become so laser focused on 90-day wins? And, then how did it evolve from there?
So I was working as a corporate supervisor for this company, and my team, every 90 days, you have to report to SEC, right? Publicly traded company. And so it was easy for me to just figure out the next 90 days, what do we need to accomplish to get to that next filing? What did my team need to do to prepare? And so I remember very vividly, I have a picture that I love pictures. And so I have a picture that I took of myself writing on the big sticky the next 3 months, April, May, June. What did we have to do? Which team member would do what thing for us? And clearly look and say, okay, these next 3 months, April, we need to do this in order for us to get to June. So we have to talk to Penske, speak to the real estate people, all these different things, prepare the software. I love software. So it's like, okay, we have to work with the software development team to make sure we can do this. We can pull these reports. The team can get what they need. Okay, we need to give it to this team by that time frame so they can in turn review it and send it back to us, make any updates. They get the report at the end of the quarter. So we were just really efficient. And to the point where I'm like, hey, we're just rocking and rolling here, to the point where we were going to the other team and say, do you need help with this? Because we see that you're slowing down our process. And so if we can help you and make you be more efficient, then we can all win together, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, there's something here. What if we try to do this in our personal lives? And so the one lady, she was planning her wedding. And so it's like, okay, what do you need to do within the next 90 days to be prepared? So you're not stressed out. You're not waiting to the last minute. Say another lady, she was preparing to finish her master's program. So she had a couple classes left. She had some assignments she needed to get done. I was working on my, at the time I was working on like putting together this framework of what 90 days looks like. And so I love the fact that you talked about the vision with your church, because the 6 steps to 90-day wins, the first step starts with vision. And so we were this case study I was putting together. And at the time, my husband was preparing for an event in Jamaica. And so he had to look at the time frame of where he was to get everything done. My daughter, she wanted all A's. So we were talking about, okay, what was it going to take for you to, at the end of the semester, have all A's? What assignments did you need to get done? What things, there's always things you have to get done. So let's put it together. So my thought is, I was listening to one of your podcasts and you were talking about, you start at home, right? And so
Yeah.
that's it. Like, if I can encourage my family, then I believe I can encourage anyone, right? So
Yes.
everyone was working on their thing, right? Everyone. And so we have these weekly meetings. How is it going? Oh, well, I need to talk to the teacher about this. I didn't understand this. Okay, so how are you going to go about doing that? That was my daughter. My husband, I need to talk to the vendors in Jamaica, make sure they have X, X, and X. Okay, let's look. So next week, this is what you're focusing on. Okay. Oh, wow. You're ahead of the game. So what you thought you would be doing in June, you can actually move it up to May. Perfect. Okay. I'm getting these classes done. I got these assignments done, Sandra. I think I can do this. Now I can look at that next level for, I'm going to go get this project management certification. Now I can prepare and find out, start looking at courses. So everyone was moving. And the thing about taking the time after you figure out that 90 days, you break it down and say, okay, well, this month, this is what I'm working on. And then this week, this is what I'm working on. And
Yeah.
then you figure out who's going to keep you accountable, whether it's a coach, whether it's a good friend, whether it's a mentor. you are being intentional about talking to these people, because I call them trusted advisors. These people are truly vested in seeing you win. That's the thing. Like, obviously, you don't want to be around anyone who doesn't care if you achieve your goals, right?
Right.
And so by putting this all together, like, I was clear, we were living it. And then I was, like I told you, getting on podcasts where people were talking about it. But it didn't initially come to me to use this as the name for the podcast. And so that same trusted advisor, I remember we met. I can tell you, I have a picture of when I'm sitting down at the restaurant at lunch that we met at,
I
and I
gotta
was
ask you, you
waiting
mean a
for
picture in your head or an actual picture?
actual pictures. I have
Okay.
actual pictures, and I'm sitting there waiting for him. And I'm excited because I'm telling him my plan. You know, we talked about all these different things, and I'm like, I got it together, and I had this name, and I told him, and I love him because he listened and he said, okay. And I remember I had a business trip. I was going out to Oregon, and within days he messaged me and he's like, let's talk about that. And so I'm like, okay, like, what do you think? He's like, you know, this idea is good, but your 90-day framework, I can't get it out my head. I've listened to you talk on those other podcasts. What do you think about that? As soon as he said it to me, I'm like, that's it. He's like, because this idea that you're looking at, you can put that under that, but then you also can go so many other places with this 90-day wins. He's like, what do you think about that? And I'm like, that's it. That's what it is. You are absolutely right. And to this day, we laugh because I will not share with you what I initially thought it should be.
I have the exact same story with my first. I only 3, maybe 4 people. Please do not Google certain things with God and gigs and go all the way back, because I have a name as well that I'm so embarrassed by. And you know what? What's so amazing, because I'm already alluding, I'll put a link in the show notes to your other podcast with Chris Crementos, who is
Yes.
our mutual mentor when it comes to Podfest and all of
Yes.
us here in that community, and his whole adage on starting ugly and the book that you guys were talking about. And it's so important what you just described, which is number one, you already went to the mentor. And we're talking, by the way, to creators, entrepreneurs, content creators with this faith-focused background who usually have great ideas,
Yes.
but aren't okay, I'm not going to use the word that Erica Badu said, but we are sensitive. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm saying that we all have that struggle with, this is what I think it's supposed to be. And the ability to have somebody in your life to say, yes, but, right? There's this thing in acting where we say yes, and. So it's kind of like, yes, and why don't we do this? Even though, why don't we add to that? Like you said, and this advisor did it. What I wanted you to quickly speak to was not just those people who are kind of stuck with the first iteration, scared to go forward, but what are some of the other struggles you see with people with their deciding to pursue something within that 90 days? Is it overthinking? Is it the time span feels like, oh, it's too short? So what is the common issues once you see someone, they're like your friend, like me, they're like, this is great. But then what's the very first few roadblocks that they hit as soon as they say they want to achieve this, but then something comes up and, you know, gets in their way?
So the biggest things I encounter is, like you said, the overthinking, but then the confidence, because it's like, yeah. And then it's like, oh, I'm not sure. What will so-and-so think? How can I, I don't think I have enough schooling. I need this. And so it's so important that you remember why you truly desire to do the thing you desire to do. And then confidence is one of the things we work on, right? Because so many times we can allow other people's opinions and thoughts to cloud our heads and make us feel and make us doubt what we truly desire to be true. And so, as someone who really believes in Think and Grow Rich, it talks so much. And I love, like right now I'm reading Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice. I read it a couple of years ago and I'm reading it again with this group of individuals from like all over the world. And it's like, that thought, if you will allow that thought, you think about, and so many people have said in so many different ways, it's like, if you can believe it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand, you
Mm.
can make that thing happen. But it starts with you believing in yourself and continuing to trust. And, we believe in God. So we ask God, right? Like he says, one of my favorite verses this year that I've been just laser focused on is Matthew 7:7.
Yep.
And so it's like, seek and ye shall find, ask and it will be given unto you. And so I remember having a discussion with my husband earlier this year where there was a devotion where that scripture came out. And it was interesting because the first day they were talking about that scripture, and then the next day they were talking about it. And I was like, okay, God's trying to tell me something. I don't know what he's telling you, honey, but he's talking to me.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't have that thing. I'm not further along because I'm trying to do it in my own strength. And so when I know I don't have to, I just have to go to the source and plug in and make sure I stay plugged in. So I stay charged up and stay focused. And so I am so committed to reminding people why, where did that come from? Where did that thought come from? Where did that idea come from? Did God give it to someone else to pursue, or did he give it to you? And so if you know that that's yours and you truly desire it, well, have faith and
Yeah.
believe in your abilities and know that everything you need, you can get it to help you. I didn't know anything about recording anything, but I got myself a Apple. I went to the Apple store. I said, hey, I saw this video you have on here and I want to make my own music. And he's like, oh, well, you just play around here in GarageBand and you do this and you do that. And I said, yeah, I want like an En Vogue feel. And he's like, okay, well, play around with this and play around with that. I came home, I'm playing around. I'm like, I sang in the church choir and I sang in the
Hey.
high school choir, right? So I got enough that, I'm in church and I'm singing my hymns and someone's like, oh, you have a nice voice. And my husband just rolls his eyes. I'm like, I have enough. Enough.
You gotta know. Yes, your voice is the five loaves and the two fish and the five loaves exactly.
And so I'm like, I'm going to do this. And then next thing you know, I'm like, I got a theme song, honey. You want to hear it? He's like, okay. He's like, oh, that's kind of good. I was like, do you feel En Vogue? Do you feel the vibe? And then it's like, okay, I go to this meetup and I meet this lady. She's like, I have a podcast. I can help you. No problem. Okay, great. Then I meet another lady and she's like, you know what? I'll help you. And guess what? I'll edit it for you. The first season, she didn't charge me anything. Once you take that step, God continues to show you the way. It's not an if, it's a when.
Yes.
It is a when. So are you going to believe? Are you going to listen to all the people that, how many people I'm in the corporate setting, they're like, so tell me about your podcast. I'm like, we're supposed to be talking about these financials. Like, why are you talking to me about
Isn't that crazy? That's crazy how, I number one, I'm going to give this to you free because you already did your theme song. So clearly you're already in the songwriting mode. So just remember that you just said it's not if, it's when.
Yes.
Both WHEN and WIN.
Yes.
So when? 90
Yes.
days. 90 days? When?
Yes.
So put that in the song somewhere. But ooh, I love what you mentioned about Matthew 7:7 and the scripture that came to mind. I love that we go right here because this is why I love this podcasting method. Because again, like you said, we don't have to divide between the entrepreneur and the evangelist. Like this is what we say. This is what we do. Is who we are. We're not trying to create this artificial line between sacred and secular. And so one of the things immediately that you said that brought to my mind is when you said the desires and the confidence to have what God put in your heart, why not pursue it? And one preacher, I won't take credit for this, I think it was Pastor Phil Muncie that said it, I think it's right. He came to our church and he said, we quote all the time, God will give you the desires of your heart, right? What he said is, we're reading that wrong. We think it's finishes. God will the desires of your heart. And then he said, why don't you read it like this? God will give you the desires of your heart.
Wow.
The desires come from God. We focus God and heart. Yeah. But we forget God literally gave the desire. That's the direct object of the sentence.
Wow.
God gives you the desires. And the fact that we oftentimes think, well, what if it's me? And I know you've heard this, I'm sure, from clients.
Yes.
Is this really God? Is this really a God idea? Is this a big idea? Is this really big enough? Is this really? And so we question the root of the idea, and then we won't go forward. Again, I hope you're the coach. I'm just here receiving. But I'm pretty sure I've seen that in my life too, where we question not just our ability,
Yeah.
but we question the validity
Yeah.
of the goal. So how do you help people not only to get past the overthinking, but now to actually integrate and take steps? Like, what's that thing to get them past the overthinking to actually and moving forward because the idea is valid?
Yeah. So, like I told you, we start with vision, and I allow them to talk about and to think about what will it look like when you achieve this?
Okay.
What will you experience? What would it be for your family? How will you spend your time? What will change because you took this step, because you're taking this step, right? So it's to allow them to know that you are doing this. So what will it look like for you? And then we get to work. And once we figure out, okay, this is what you want to do, we look at a year, but then, and we create a vision board, but then we go to that 90 days. So these next 90 days, what will happen? And so we write it down. Who do you need to meet? We use the calendar. The calendar is our friend.
Okay.
I mean, you make a calendar invite for Alan to sit down for an hour and write those emails and journal.
Okay, so this is a calendar invite to myself. Is that correct?
Yes,
Are you saying that I'm literally going to
sir.
go into the calendar and I'm saying appointment with Alan,
Yes,
blank, blank,
you
blank, blank,
have
blank?
to, because think about it. You got your wife, you got your kids. Things always come up. It seems like every day. I'm like, was did you tell me that? And she's like, oh no, they decided they're going to move it to this. And so you have to make sure you allow for the things you can control. You want to be ahead of it, right? So you were
Right.
looking at the calendar and you are starting and you're preparing. So when that husband comes in and when that daughter comes in and when that friend comes in that obviously needs you, you can be clear, and you have to honor your time the same way you would honor someone else's time, right? You have to show up for yourself. It's something about you proving to yourself that what you believe and what you care about matters. And so you have to be very disciplined in that. And you set those times and then you honor it. And you set that time that you're going to meet with me. It's a standing meeting that we have. I love to tell the story about this one gentleman I worked with, and he's a truck driver. And so he had some time off for something, and we were meeting at this farm here in Atlanta every Saturday. I would go get my produce. He would go get his produce too. And he heard me talking about 90-day wins, and he heard about the podcast. He listened. And so he said, you know what, Sandy, I want to make socks. Socks. Okay, cool. He's like, I've always had this desire to make these socks. And, my family thinks I'm crazy, but I want to do it. I'm like, you can do it. So what are they going to look like? Well, usually someone who's been thinking about something and wants to do something, they can tell you all the things about it, because that burning desire that God put within them, every hour, not hour, but like every week, they're thinking about it in some way, shape, or form. So let's put that down. Let's write it down. It's something about writing things down. You can type it up on the computer, but it's something about writing it down and you doing it. It kind of registers in your mind differently. And so we sat down and talked about all the things he thinks he needed to do. And we would have conversation on it. Next week, he comes back. He's like, yeah, I was speaking to these guys in China and I showed them my drawings and I'm sending it to them. I'm like, good for you. And so what do you have to do this week? Well, I want this to be like this. And what do you think about this? Would you wear this? I was like, yeah, I'd wear that. At the end of 12 weeks, 90 days, I was holding his socks in my hand. This gentleman who didn't know anything about product creation, all these other things, but he had someone he could talk to every week, that he could run ideas with, that he could talk about his fears and his concerns with, who could help him reframe his thinking for whatever negativity he was having. And, language barrier, time differences. Oh, they weren't sure about this. I had to go back to them on this. But he was so excited to be able to share with me and to allow for me to walk this journey with him. How proud was I to hold these socks? Now, fast forward, he has leggings. And I can tell you, these leggings are better than these Pumas and Adidas leggings that I have. But it's just about you believing in yourself and taking that step, and then taking that other step. And then you look back at yourself like, look at me. I did that. I actually did that.
Oh my gosh, I cannot. Number one, I'm already getting ready to go look for these socks because we need some like comfortable things we're walking around the house in.
Yes.
But number two, I wanted to grab as soon as you mentioned the writing things down, and I said, "Oh, look what I have! My journal right here from Podfest, where my notes are literally." And something you mentioned, I have to go back to it. Hopefully, they'll rewind it so they've already saved this podcast and already bookmarked it and sent it to all their friends. But what you mentioned about the calendar invite to myself, that's literally something I'm going to start implementing right away. That is a huge, huge nugget of wisdom to actually commit to your time to yourself versus everybody else I've written in my calendar. Everybody else has an email CC to do this with them. And yet myself, I either leave it as a blank space or a maybe or a task. So I love that. I wanted to make sure that you got a chance to share this part because as we're starting to wind down, there's something that always hits me when it comes to us as creatives. You've mentioned your podcast. You've mentioned even as you're singing and you're creating your own theme song, right? Yeah. But there's something about all of us when it comes down to being the person that we wish we had. And so as a coach, me personally right now, like I never would have dreamed, like you just mentioned, podcasting. No one grows up saying, I want to be a podcaster.
Yeah.
Right? God just leads us down this path. And then, like you said, one step at a time. Yes. So I want to quickly ask you, what is the most gratifying thing that you've seen? Is something surprised you maybe? Is this just something that like, you mentioned the sock store. Maybe there was another client or something else that you just look at and you just said it. You look back and you're like, I did that. Can you name just one thing that has been like the biggest kind of aha moment that you've experienced since you tried this new and become this new version of yourself in terms of coaching?
Yes, I received an email from a young lady who found my podcast on Pandora. And she sent me one of those emails that, I'm not sure if you'll see this, but I just wanted to tell you that I'm preparing my goals and I'm so excited as I enter high school.
Wow.
I just sat there and looked at the email and thought, thank you, Lord, because this is why I do this. This is why I do this. All the thoughts of, should I put this on LinkedIn and let people know that this is what I'm doing? These however hundred of people know me as an accountant and how all those negative thoughts, they all didn't matter when I saw this email from this young lady telling me that she was preparing her goals and she was excited and she just wanted to tell me that, I've encouraged her and she's going into high school, Alan, really? Like that to me is something that I will always cherish and never forget because you never know the impact you have. And the fact that she took the time, I'll go to homecoming and my friends will tell me, your book inspired me. Your podcast inspires me. I listen to it all the time. Yeah, but you've never said that to me. And I see you all the time on social media. Thank you. But to know that this young lady, took the time to say, yeah, and I'm implementing these things you've shared, that just was, I'll podcast forever because of it.
Gosh, there's so much. We're going to talk after. I was about to go somewhere with that whole comment you just made about people who don't respond or should respond, or how do we close that feedback loop. But I'm going to talk to you after. That'll be part two for all the real podcast fans that we're going to talk about. The next thing I'm going to tell Sandy about. But You basically answered my last question right there, which I think you're going to say in almost the same thing, but I want to make sure to honor what I said.
Yeah.
What would you say to the person who is where you were? I feel like it's going to be the same thing you said to that high school student.
Yeah.
But when that person is in that meeting, they already have a 20-year career in something amazing and something that's already blessed them. God directed you toward that, right? But what
Totally.
do you say to the person who is where you were, that one moment when someone says, hey, you should be doing X? You should be doing, what would you say to that person who is the Sandy who does
Yes.
the who me? What would you say to yourself so that person that's listening right now will be able to take the right kind of steps that you took?
I would say listen, really listen, because God's trying to tell you something. And have faith in yourself. And you can dream. You can take a step. You can learn something new. Don't be afraid to step out there literally on faith and believe in yourself. Definitely. That's what I would say.
Sandy, I could talk to you ever. I am so ready to jump into my 90-day wins right now. I'm telling you, I'm ready to get my vision board out and just implement this stuff and take all these big ideas I have and actually working them out. But I would need, just like the people who are listening and watching, I would need some direct support. So
Yes.
tell them, how can they get that direct support from you in terms of
Yeah.
what to do, how to work with you, and how to reach you online?
Definitely. So everywhere on social media, 90 Day Wins. That is my handle. That is like, I own it.
Come on, trademark. Come on.
Yes, I just got my trademark in March. I was patiently waiting, like, Lord, I know you gave this to me, so I know it'll be fine. So you can find me everywhere at 90 Day Wins. And you can also email me at coachsandyb.com. That's where all my coaching lives. And so, yeah, let's connect. I believe that now is the perfect time for you to get started. So, whatever it is you desire to do, let's put that plan in place together so we can achieve wins together. Because that's what I believe. We win together. Like I told you, when someone shares with me their goal, I'm vested and I want to see them win. So, we work together and we win together.
All right. Well, you got the warning from the beginning. Do not tell this lady your goals if you don't want to achieve them, because she is going to stick with you like white on rice to make sure that you do it. Well, Sandy, this has been an absolute blessing and honor for you to be on the God and Geek Show. I know it won't be the last time you're a part of this community. This is literally only your introduction, but you're now in the living room. You're invited into the kitchen. You're a part of us now. Thank you so much for being a part of the God and Geek Show. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you too. And thank you for having me.
My friend, thank you for watching this episode. If that blessed you, you got to make sure that you stay connected with this community and this channel so that you can get more where that came from. We're sharing great interviews, tactics, strategies, mindsets, lifestyle choices, everything is going to help you become a totally confident creative. And don't miss an episode of the God and Gig Show. If you are staying connected to our channel, you'll be able to find us anytime we release new episodes. And you can check out some of our archives of almost 200 episodes now that we've shared over the last few years. Make sure you check out one of the suggestions right now, because it's probably perfect for you to continue to develop as a creative. And continue to stay connected with us, because we're here to help you become the creative that God created you to be. We'll see you in the next episode.